Hello, and welcome to another episode of Sheer Mind. Do you often find yourself comparing your life to others with higher social status? Do you feel like you're constantly measuring your worth against others? If so, you're not alone. Today, we will delve into the reasons behind this habit and how to break free from it. To understand why we compare ourselves to others, we first need to understand the social comparison theory. This theory was proposed by psychologist Festinger in the 1950s and suggests that we evaluate ourselves by comparing ourselves to others. It is a natural human tendency to evaluate our opinions and abilities based on those around us. We use social comparison to help us form opinions about ourselves and our place in society. There are two types of social comparisons, upward and downward. Upward social comparison occurs when we compare ourselves to someone who we perceive as doing better than us in a certain aspect of life. This type of comparison can lead to feelings of inadequacy and low self-worth. Downward social comparison, on the other hand, occurs when we compare ourselves to someone who we perceive as doing worse than us in a certain aspect of life. This type of comparison can lead to feelings of superiority and overconfidence. One of the main reasons we compare ourselves to others is that we live in a society that values social status. We often use social status as a measure of success, and it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that having a high social status will make us happier and more fulfilled. We may compare ourselves to others with higher social status in an attempt to boost our self-esteem, but this can often backfire and lead to feelings of inadequacy and low self-worth. Another reason we compare ourselves to others is that we often lack self-awareness. We may not fully understand our own strengths and weaknesses, so we look to others for validation and feedback. However, this can lead to unhealthy comparisons and a constant need for external validation. Comparison can also be driven by our innate desire for social approval and belonging. We want to be accepted and respected by those around us, so we look to others as a way of measuring our own social worth. However, this can often lead to feelings of anxiety and insecurity as we constantly compare ourselves to others and try to live up to their expectations. Now that we understand the reasons behind why we compare ourselves to others, let's explore some practical steps we can take to overcome this habit. Tip number 1. Practice gratitude. Practicing gratitude is one of the most effective ways to overcome the habit of comparison. When we focus on what we're grateful for, we shift our attention away from what we don't have and towards what we do have. This can help us to cultivate a sense of contentment and appreciation for our own lives, rather than constantly comparing ourselves to others. One way to practice gratitude is to keep a gratitude journal. Each day, write down 3 things that you're grateful for. These can be big or small, and they don't have to be related to material possessions or social status. They can be as simple as a beautiful sunset, a warm cup of tea, or a kind word from a friend. Another way to practice gratitude is to express appreciation to the people in your life. Take the time to thank someone for their support or kindness, or write a note of appreciation to a loved one. This can help you to build stronger relationships and feel more connected to the people around you. Finally, it's important to remember that gratitude is a mindset, not just a practice. Even in difficult or challenging situations, we can find things to be grateful for. By focusing on the positive aspects of our lives, we can develop a more positive outlook and overcome the tendency to compare ourselves to others. By incorporating gratitude into our daily lives, we can develop a greater sense of contentment and appreciation for what we have, rather than focusing on what we don't have. This can help us to overcome the habit of comparison and focus on our own journey and progress. Tip number 2. Build self-awareness. It's important to have a clear understanding of our own strengths and weaknesses. Spend some time reflecting on your own values, goals, and interests. This will help you to develop a stronger sense of self and make comparisons with others less relevant. When we know ourselves better, we are less likely to compare ourselves to others and more likely to focus on our own growth and progress. There are several ways to build self-awareness. One way is to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being present and fully engaged in the current moment. When we are mindful, we are better able to observe our own thoughts and emotions without judgment or criticism. This can help us to become more aware of when we are comparing ourselves to others and why. Another way to build self-awareness is to reflect on our own values and priorities. What is truly important to us? What do we want to achieve in our own lives? By clarifying our own values and priorities, we can focus on our own goals and accomplishments rather than constantly comparing ourselves to others. Building self-awareness is about developing a deeper understanding of ourselves and our own tendencies. When we are more aware of our own thoughts and emotions, we can begin to make conscious choices about how we want to respond to situations and people in our lives. This can help us to break the cycle of comparison and focus on our own journey and progress. Tip number 3. Set realistic goals. Setting realistic goals is about setting achievable objectives for ourselves that align with our abilities, resources, and circumstances. When we set unrealistic goals, we may become overwhelmed or discouraged if we don't achieve them, leading us to compare ourselves negatively to others who may have accomplished similar goals. By setting realistic goals, we can work towards our objectives in a manageable and sustainable way, building confidence and self-esteem along the way. This can also help us focus on our own progress, rather than comparing ourselves to others who may be in different circumstances or have different resources at their disposal. Tip number 4. Limit social media use. Limiting social media use means reducing the amount of time we spend on social media platforms or unfollowing accounts that make us feel inadequate or triggered. Social media can be a breeding ground for comparison as we are exposed to the highlight reels of other people's lives, which can make us feel like we're not measuring up. By being mindful of how social media affects our mental health and well-being and using it as a tool for inspiration and connection rather than comparison, we can take control of our social media use and reduce the negative impact it can have on our self-esteem and happiness. Tip number 5. Practice self-compassion. Self-compassion is about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a friend. When we compare ourselves to others, it's easy to be hard on ourselves and engage in negative self-talk. Instead, practice self-compassion by speaking to yourself kindly and offering yourself grace and forgiveness. Remember that everyone has their own journey and struggles, and it's okay to make mistakes and experience setbacks. Tip number 6. Cultivate a growth mindset. A growth mindset is the belief that our abilities and intelligence can be developed through hard work and dedication. When we have a growth mindset, we view challenges and setbacks as opportunities for growth and learning. This can help us to focus on our own progress and development, rather than constantly comparing ourselves to others and feeling inadequate. The habit of comparison can be a challenging pattern to break free from. But by understanding the reasons behind why we compare ourselves to others with high social status, and by taking practical steps to cultivate self-awareness and acceptance, we can begin to let go of the cycle of comparison and find peace in the present moment. Before I go, let me tell you a Zen story that illustrates this beautifully. Once there was a farmer who had a beautiful horse. One day the horse ran away, leaving the farmer without his prized possession. The farmer's neighbors came to offer their condolences, saying how unlucky he was to lose such a valuable horse. The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A few days later, the horse returned to the farmer, bringing with it a group of wild horses. The neighbors came to congratulate the farmer, saying how lucky he was to now have even more horses. The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's son was trying to train one of the wild horses, but he was thrown off and broke his leg. Again, the neighbors came to offer their condolences, saying how unlucky the farmer was to have his son injured. The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The following week, the army came to the village to draft young men for a war. However, because the farmer's son had a broken leg, he was exempt from the draft. The neighbors came to congratulate the farmer, saying how lucky he was to have his son spared from the war. The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." This story teaches us that there are many variables in life that we cannot control. It's easy to compare ourselves to others and judge our circumstances as better or worse, but in reality, we never know how things will turn out in the long run. Instead of getting caught up in comparisons, we can cultivate a sense of equanimity and acceptance towards whatever life brings our way. This can help us to let go of the habit of comparison and find peace in the present moment. So I encourage you to take these teachings to heart and remember that you are worthy and unique just as you are. No matter where you are in life, there is always something to be grateful for and a path forward toward greater fulfillment and contentment. Your worth is not determined by your social status or how you measure up to others. You are worthy and valuable simply for being you. Thank you for watching, and may you find peace and contentment on your journey.